Howdy. Hey guys. All right. Wow. All right. Perfect timing to start the live as it just started pouring outside a few minutes ago. So I don't know if you guys can hear it. I assume you probably can't hear it through the mic. I think probably the technology between here and there is probably doing a fair enough job cutting out that sound, but it's definitely noisy when it rains. As I've said before a few times recently, like, I don't know what the weather's like outside unless it's raining, and it's raining a lot at the moment. So, all right, today, welcome. We're gonna start working on the Falc, or the Falke, which, as I understand, is the probably correct pronunciation of it. I've always just said Falc. Falke, I think, is correct. I'll try to get used to saying that. It sounds like I'm pronouncing it wrong, even though it's pronouncing it correctly. But anyway, this is the 40th anniversary version. Maybe 2, but probably more likely about 3 weeks ago or so. You made it in time. Congratulations. Welcome, Pat. Yes, you made it in time for sure. I think it's probably 3 weeks ago or so, or more. When I did the unboxing for this kit, and I told you guys I'm going to be building it live over the course of a few live streams because it's going to take a little while to build a kit like this. Can't just knock it out in a single live stream. So yeah, it's just taken me a while to get started on it, but here we are. So we're going to get started on this. This, of course, is just the color card. I just don't really need that here. Actually, normally, like, my binder of all the color cards is over there. I want to check if this is the same one that's already in the book. I have a feeling it probably is. With some of the stuff, like when it's a kit that's just being re-released, they don't make a new color card for it. It's just the same color card. So it's probably, I probably already have the same color card. But anyway, this, normally that just lives in the box. And the instructions are what is most important. So with this guy, let's just take a quick peek here as we're kind of taking a few minutes, just kind of let some people roll into the live stream here before we get started. I haven't done any prep work ahead of time. So normally when I do like a Gundam kit or whatever, I'll cut out all the parts and get rid of all the nubs and everything ahead of time, just so that you guys aren't having to watch me do all that boring stuff. But on a kit like this, it's kind of harder to do that. I could sort of do it to a degree. The way I would have to organize the parts would be a little bit different. I could maybe do it, and maybe we'll do that on like a future build if it's like on an SAFS suit or something, maybe a little bit easier. This one's just the nature of the kits didn't really lend itself well to doing how I normally do. So bitrate is really low. I don't know if that could be, well, I don't know how much that rain would have an effect on that, but let's see. Well, I wonder if it might also have to do with the fact that I'm also currently uploading a video at the moment. Let me know, guys, if it's getting bad, I'll stop the video upload. I imagine that if there's problems, it would probably be because of that. Anyway, so yeah, we're just going to be building it all as we go along. And there is a few things here, but we can just kind of go through. Yeah, bitrate is slow. I came in time for a live stream. Yes, you did, Spice Cat, but it's like less than 144 right now. Okay. Give it a minute. Let's give it a minute and see if it improves. If not, I'll stop the upload because that's probably what will be slowing it down, I guess. So we'll check back in just a second on that before we get started on the build. But just taking a quick peek through the construction of this guy. Talk a little bit about kind of how it looks like it's going together. So even though I think this is probably the third version of the Falc that I have. Falke. All right, you guys are letting me know that the stream quality is low. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Give me just a second. We'll hang on. YouTube used to have a thing. So like I said, I'm uploading a video at the moment on YouTube. That's probably what's slowing down the speed here. They used to have a feature, I feel like, where you could pause and upload, but I don't think that that feature exists anymore. Let me see. Yeah. My phone, it looks okay, but on the TV, it looks like 120. Okay. Remember that Windom that got roasted for the pixelation of the photo? Windom? Huh? The pixelation of the photo? I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about like a live stream that I did of the Windom or something? But let's see. Looking at tab better now. Okay, well, let's wait a minute because the upload is like already like halfway done. And it still has like an hour or so left. So it still has a long way to go. But like the upload taking as long as it does, I kind of don't want to cancel it if it's already halfway done. But if the stream is going bad, then I can cancel that. Okay. So sorry, guys. Looks a lot better. Okay. So are you streaming on 2 different platforms? Yes. Bitfront, Bifront. Yeah, streaming on YouTube and Twitch at the same time, which normally, as far as I understand it, has not caused any issue. So I don't think that would be an issue. It could just be like one more thing. You know, there's a lot of things going on. I'm streaming to 2 different platforms, and I'm also uploading a video to YouTube at the same time. So that could be, you know, a lot of things compiling up. Anyway, getting to talk about the build a little bit, and I'll check back on the quality in just a second. But for now, okay, we start off building the inside of the cockpit here first, and the pilot figure, which I don't think I'm going to bother with the pilot figure because I don't plan on having the hatch open on this. So there's not really need to put a pilot figure in there, building that, if it's not going to be something that's going to be visible. So probably just leave that out for the time being. And then, you know, that may come in handy for something later. I don't know. You actually get 2 figures with this kit. One seated or in the cockpit, and then a standing one, just kind of have out to the side separately if you want. But yeah, I'll just kind of keep those off to the side for now. We won't mess with that. But we do need to at least build the cockpit, I think. Do we even need to build the cockpit? If we're not going to have it open, I think we probably still maybe need to at least build it just to have the structural integrity inside. And it's a fairly simple construction here just to put the cockpit pieces together. So, and then it looks like we basically we have the bottom half of the kit. So you have like the bottom half and you putting some pieces on that and under that. And then we have the top half, like putting some pieces on that. And then we put the main bottom half and top half together with the cockpit and the engine and a couple other little side panels in there at the same time. So as far as like sub-assemblies go, there's not really much for this first section of the build here. Like sub-assemblies that require glue and seam line removal. Basically, everything's going to require glue. I'm going to put glue on almost everything. So like when you're doing like the first day of construction on a machine Krieger kit, and this is just how it usually tends to be for me, the first session of work on a machine Krieger kit just is a lot of gluing. Just gluing everything, especially all the parts that will require seams. So like these couple of parts that go on like at the very end are parts that are just 2 halves sandwiched together. And so we will have to glue and then sand the seam lines on those later. But in terms of like seam lines, it's pretty minimal. I mean, like we're going to have the big seam line going around down the sides, you know, between the main top and bottom half of the chassis of it. But other than that, there's not a lot of like smaller little sub-assemblies that also require seam line removal. It looks like there is like kind of on the engine. And why don't we start there just because it's pretty close to the beginning. And I just want to get a sense of, you know, the other parts we can save for later, but at least for now. we can take a look at this engine part and see if we are going to need to glue and sand that seam line, or if it's just something we can just glue and we don't need to worry too much about the seam itself if it's not going to be something that's going to be visible on the kit. I'm not too sure at this point. So we get the part out here and get it put together. I heard that this kit uses the fuselages of two P.51s. That's really cool. Yes, indeed. I think like not this kit itself, but the original kit. I believe that's correct. So that would be like these sections here, right there. You can see it's basically two, yeah, I guess P.51s, if you said, I don't know exactly which type of aircraft it is, but P.51. It's basically two of those fuselages just kind of on their sides here to make the sides of this. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things that if you're just looking at this and like you didn't really think about it, you wouldn't notice like at first, but then once you know that that's what's there, it's really difficult to unsee something like that. So yeah, so I think we will need to do a little bit of seam line removal on this part. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue this here first so that that glue can start doing its thing while then we're working on some other stuff. So normally if it's parts like this that need to be glued and I need to sand the seam lines, I won't even worry too much at this point about sanding the nubs, except for maybe this one here. Just because usually the nubs are like right along the edge of where the seam line is, and I'm going to be sanding the seam line anyway. So unless it was like an undergate, which I don't know if I've ever run into like any undergated parts on a machine Krieger kit, but if it was an undergated undergate, obviously then that would cause you an issue because you wouldn't be able to put the parts together firmly to glue the seam, right? So that is something we would have to look out for. So I'd also need to change the blade on my knife. I need to do that and also get my sanding stick. I think I have one right here, fortunately, but it's not the one I was thinking to use, but that'll work fine. Just to sand that. I don't think that this part is really actually going to be visible at all, but just in case, I'll just sand that just to make sure that I don't have any sneaky nub marks later. Otherwise, everything else about this can be sanded later, but just since these parts need to be glued, I want to just get the glue on first, and then everything else we can handle later on. All right. Anyway, how are you guys doing today? It's Monday. We were just live on Friday doing a live build, weren't we? And now here we are back again. I was actually not planning on doing a live stream build, working on this today. I wanted to start work on this week, but I wasn't necessarily planning on doing it today. It just kind of came in, and in the morning as I was kind of deciding, all right, what am I going to try to knock out today? I thought, well, it's as good as time as any to start working on this kit. So I got the review of the Raider Gundam done in the morning. That's what we live built on Friday. If you guys missed that live build, go back and check that out later. Really, really nice kit. Just to give you the TLDR on that. Really fantastic kit. And yeah, hopefully you guys will enjoy that review. So that's what's being uploaded now at the moment. Let's see. The scientist building his latest weapon of destruction. Indeed. What's going on, Mike? And Speedball Haro working on a MG scale Mobile 0. Oh, that was that. What was the company that put out that kit? I can't remember at the moment, but yeah, it was obviously not Bandai, but it was another company that put that out. The only issue with this side should be fine, but on this side, there's a little bit of detail right next to where that seam line is going to have to be sanded. So hopefully that won't cause us too much issue, but looking back at our instructions here, there's a couple little parts that are going to be added onto this, but for the most part, not really. Not a whole lot that's going to be added onto this. So we'll leave that for now, and we'll be able to sand that a little bit later. I'm just going to go ahead and put that aside. And with that, we can start on the cockpit. It's the new Motor King version. Okay, here we go. All right, this would be runner C, which we need C 18. And again, because these cockpit parts are going on the inside, and I'm not planning to have this open, I'm not going to be too worried about cleaning these parts up super nicely and sanding everything and doing all that, just because it's all going to be contained on the inside, invisible anyway. So that's runner C. This is runner D. It's going to also take me a little bit to be able to remember which parts are which. D20. This one also looks like it goes on the inside. Where? Oh, a little bit later on. D20, 20, 20. Here we are. So there's some cool detail inside the cockpit here. Even if you had the cockpit hatch open, I feel like there wouldn't be a whole lot of this that really would be visible at all. But nevertheless, let's see, that's E and F. Okay, here's the part I was looking for. So on these big parts, big runners here, which are the main halves of the body, it's almost all there is on the run. I might as well cut these out while we're here. It's not like I'm gonna confuse the parts. Normally I would, leave something on the runner until I need it so that I'm sure it's the right part that I need. Otherwise, you don't know what's what necessarily. You usually can see it, but just to be safe, I normally leave stuff on the runner until I need it. But with these, I feel like I'm probably not going to get too confused about which part's which. Should be all right. Yeah. It's definitely got some huge gates on this, because, as you can see, it's a pretty huge part. It's a lot of plastic in just a single piece there. There's our two main halves. And that should give you a sense of roughly how big the kit is going to be. Quite large, really. It's a 120 scale. So, just to kind of get it roughly fit together. And that's going to be a ton of glue to get these put together. But you guys can kind of see roughly how big that's going to be. Right. So last thing we need then is runner E. Numbers 15 and 16. These being our handles. All right. Sorry you're late. Ray, that's fine. No need to apologize. Welcome. Building something a little bit different today. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Let me go ahead and do this. Is that better? No, not really. I'm just keeping it like it was. Probably the best bet. There, just lighting wise. Yes, I was going to change the knife blade. Let's go ahead and do that before I forget again. Get a new knife blade on here. That one, the blade itself is kind of fine, but the tip, the very tip of the knife blade broke off a little while ago. So I've been meaning to change that. Yeah. All right. I almost thought this was the Kshatriya Chaka. Sadly, compression is the worst I've seen so far. I can see it's all right. So if it's really not going so well, I'll just go ahead and cancel this upload. Refresh that. So that's canceled. All right. So that upload is canceled. And so that means that it should run a little bit more smoothly now. You guys can let me know if that's looking better or what. But thank you for the heads up there, Shaka. I thought it was kind of going better, but good to know if it's still not. So like I said, this is all stuff for the interior, which is not going to be shown. So I'm just kind of doing a little bit of quick cleanup of these nubs. That way, I can make sure nothing's going to be getting in the way of getting a proper fit. But at the same time, it doesn't need to be anything too pretty because it's all going to be on the inside. Anyway, like I think I was just about to say earlier, and I don't think I was able to kind of finish the thought, but I have a couple of versions of the Falc, but this is Falke, but this is my first time building one, so it's a new experience. Whereas with like some of the SAFS, especially like the capsule kits or other kits in the Machine Krieger line, I at least have some experience putting the kits together, so they're somewhat familiar. This one, it's a completely new experience for me. But over the past couple weeks at home, I have been working on the Lunadiver Stingray, just as a kind of personal project I've been working on at home. Orange says tons better now. Shaka, you look so smooth, man. Not amazing, but definitely a lot clearer. Hey, what happened to your SD Astray Type F? Okay. Well, it sounds like the quality has improved now that I stopped the YouTube uploads. So that's good to know. I was kind of worried about that, and it's good to know that that's an issue. So won't be able to do that. No uploading and streaming at the same time. Anyway. Yeah, I've been working on the Lunadiver Stingray kit at home a little bit, and it's similar to this, I feel like, just in the way that it's like a ship instead of a suit, or like the Grosserhund / Dachshund / whatever other version of that kit. It's still kind of similar to like building a suit, essentially, like a normal kind of mecha kit to a degree. This one and the Lunadiver Stingray are similar in that they're basically like big ship models, with just like a lot of little parts stuck around all over them. So I feel like it's probably a kind of similar kind of construction. And I can tell you, just as far as the Lunadiver Stingray goes, I've been working on it as, like I said, it's just kind of a personal project at home. But I will bring it in and do some video coverage of that with you guys once it gets to the stage of where I'm ready to start painting it. Basically, at the moment, still just working on getting it prepped for painting. It's a kit that people warned me that it's one that takes a long time. And, it's not that I didn't heed the warnings or I didn't pay attention to the warnings, because it's people like Lincoln himself told me that it's a difficult kit. So like, I took it seriously, but I feel like I didn't take it seriously enough. It definitely is one of the more difficult kits that I've put together, just because there is a ton of seam lines on it. And I will say, honestly, not all of them I would be all that worried about getting rid of, the seam lines, because some of them are like the type of seam lines that just look like they're just a part of the natural design, because like ships have panels of armor. They're not just one giant shell. Like the actual armor of ships is normally made up by multiple panels anyway, so the fact that you have those seam lines there, they don't necessarily look unnatural, but some of them do. Some of them definitely look like they're just parts of a model kit, and that's what you want to avoid. So yeah, the seam lines on that kit take a while, and that's just on the main kit itself. And then that kit, the Lunadiver Stingray kit, at least the original version, Also comes with 2 SAFS, and I think it's the I've actually got another one over there too, but I can't remember. The Prowler and Raccoon, I want to say, maybe, or the 1/35 scale kits that come with it. And unlike the capsule version of those kits, the 1/35 scale versions of the suits that come with the Lunadiver Stingray are also very difficult, just in terms of all the seam lines and everything that are going on with those. The capsule kits are great because they got rid of a lot of the seam lines. You have like some pros and cons. Like, instead of having seam lines on the legs, you've got like hollow gaps on the inside of the legs, which, again, you know, pros and cons. I just prefer the hollow gaps because I don't really mind them. And if you did want to fill them in, they're pretty easy to fill in anyway, just with some putty. But then again, on the non-capsule kits, the seam lines on the legs are pretty easy. It's the seam line on the body that's the most difficult, because you have to remove the seam line, and then like there's detail lines on there that you then have to go back in and rescribe, and they're like super shallow to begin with. It's like the tiniest little bit of sanding will sand them away, and then having to then try to go back and sort of rescribe them. It's yeah, takes a while. So I've been chipping away at that build at home, but it's almost done. The main ship itself is basically done. There's a little bit more like seam removal and sanding that needs to be done, like just a little bit of putty work, a little bit of puttying and sanding that needs to be done on the main body of the ship. Otherwise, everything with that is basically done. And as far as the suits go, there's 2 suits. One is basically done, and the other one is about halfway done. But then I do have plans to actually make some modifications to them as well. So that'll be something I'll do in a video with you guys. So just as soon as I have like kind of the boring stuff done at home, which is just like getting everything ready for painting, all the seam removal and all that, all the prep work, handling all that at home, and then I'll bring it in and do the fun stuff, like actually modification and painting, all that. I'll cover in a video with you guys. Video or multiple videos. It's a big kit, so probably going to take a little bit more to get that all done. But speaking of being done, this is the last little bit here that we need to glue together on the cockpit. Just kind of getting that all set in place. So this would be the interior of our cockpit, at least the seat anyway. And so you got like that kind of padding there on the side, which looks pretty cool. It's detail around and at the back of the seat. There is some like instrument panel detail inside here as well, but again, it's all going to be closed away, so not really going to matter. All right, so now we have the bottom half, which we're going to be working on. The first thing I want to do, I think, let's clean up some of these nubs here a little bit, the bottom half, and then get to work on some of the extra little parts that go in on this. And yeah, some of these gates are pretty hefty on this, so it's going to take a little bit to get this cleaned up. And I was saying earlier, Mercenary, what up? I was saying earlier that if it's a nub mark, or if it's a gate that's like right on the edge of where a seam line is, that's going to need to be glued and sanded anyway. I would normally just kind of leave it alone. But in this case, the only reason that I want to work these nub marks a little bit ahead of time is just because they're so big. Just want to make sure that they're not going to be in the way of anything, basically. Because as they are at the moment, they're quite large. So I'm just going to slice them down a little bit just so that they're a little bit more manageable later on and not in the way. But this one, it looks like similar, even though the scale is different. This is 120 scale, and the Lunadiver Stingray is 1/35. Even though the scale is different, this one looks to be kind of similar in the fact that a lot of the detail on it looks pretty shallow. And I think like before painting, probably going to have to or want to go in and rescribe some of this stuff as well, which so long as it's not too shallow, I mean, rescribing details, is relatively simple. Just the fact that there's a lot of them to do and just kind of it's a time consuming process, but it's just basically just taking a scriber and then just kind of running it through the lines that are already there just to make them a little bit deeper than they already are. So I don't think it'll be too terrible of a process. It'll just take a little bit of time, but that's okay. So we'll handle that later. The good thing about this that the Luna Diver Stingray has that this one doesn't have, fortunately, is that this doesn't have, at least I don't think so at this point. You jog my memory a little bit, but I don't think this has anything where, like, between our two halves, you have like a wire detail that's made to look like it's kind of like an exterior cable or wire or something that crosses the seam line. On the Luna Diver Stingray kit, there's multiple places there where you have like an exterior detail of like a cable, like wire kind of hose kind of part on the outside that crosses over a seam line. So when it doesn't quite match up. So if you want it to really look like a convincing hose or cable or whatever on the outside of the hull, then you basically just kind of either have to get rid of that detail entirely and just add it back in by adding an actual wire or something like that, which is what I see done probably most often, or like trying to putty that section back in or something. I don't know. There's different ways to go about it, but it just kind of adds another layer of difficulty to that process. Whereas with this, fortunately, we don't have any of that. So again, this part here, just kind of getting rid of those nubs on the inside of there. All right, so that's the main bottom half. Now we basically just have a lot of parts that we add in, on, and around this section. It's mostly from the D runner here, it looks like. So let's see. Part 1 would be D10, which is here. On this side. And D33 and 35, which are over here. 33, 35. So this is on one side, and then on the opposite side, we'll have the section. So we'll get to that in just a second. What do you think the next Verka will be? Little Beef asked. We'll try to pay attention to the chat. Sorry, guys. Aside from the technical difficulties at the beginning, haven't been paying too much attention. But Little Beef's question over there on Twitch about what I think the next Verka will be. He says, I'm hoping for a God of Gundam. It's one of my favorites, and the last MG was 2021. Yes, the God of Gundam. So in the last live stream, we talked about what the possibilities could be for the next Verka quite a lot, but I think this is one maybe that we talked about. But as far as a Verka God Gundam goes, I think I agree that would be really cool. But with the RG God Gundam coming out, I don't think that they would be in a hurry to put out an MG really in really close procession with the RG. So if they had the RG come out this year and then a brand new MG come out next year, I'm not sure if they would do that. I don't know if there's precedence for that or not, if they have done that with something else. I don't know. This is interesting how these parts fit into here. It's basically just like a pieces to just kind of thicken this section here. Strange. But so that's the only reason why I would think that it wouldn't be a God Gundam, just because we already have the RG coming out. But hey, I'm with you on the fact that I think it would be awesome. I'd love to see it. Just don't think it's too likely. So pretty easy little bits here. Like I said, these parts just seem to be in there just as a way to thicken that section a little bit. But, all right, fair enough. Always, even though I know I'm going to need the glue again in like 5 seconds, always put the cap back on when you're not using it. I cannot tell you. It's happened to me multiple times, and I've seen it happen to other people. So, of accidentally knocking your glue bottle and spilling it. So, number one, you don't want to knock over your glue bottle and spill it on your actual parts that you're working on. That's bad enough, but then you're also spilling it on your cutting mat, probably like, ruining your cutting mat, as depending on how much you really care about, how pretty your cutting mat is, but especially if it's a cutting mat, that you like, and you don't want it to be, just looking like it's got like a big cloud in the middle of it, then, it's best to take precautions not to spill your glue. And then also, it's just terrible, like for fumes. Then your hobby space is just gonna reek of Tamiya cement for days and days and days until it kind of evaporates to the point that you hopefully can't smell it anymore. Now this section here, let's see. Zigzian said Master Gundam, or he also mentioned the Mermaid Gundam. I don't feel like either of those would happen. Definitely not as a Verka. The Master Gundam as like a new MG, I feel like is possible if and only if we got a new God Gundam Master MG, God Gundam Master Grade. If we got a new, whether it be a Verka or a 2.0 or whatever it ends up being, if we got a new, let's see, God Gundam, then it might be possible that we'll get a new Master Gundam as well. But until that happens, it's not going to happen. Mermaid Gundam is just never going to happen, period. We might, as a Master Grade. As an HG, who knows? Super duper highly unlikely, but never say never, I guess. Never say never, but I think it is fair to say almost never that's not going to happen. We forgot D22. That's okay. We also need D17 while we're here, so let's go ahead and grab that. D17 and D22. Incredible long shot, but Rose and Zulu Verka would be pretty nice to match with the Shinanju. Yeah, that is a pretty incredible long shot. I feel like just a master grade Shinanju or master grade Rose and Zulu is not as much of a long shot, but a Rose and Zulu Verka, yeah, that's a long shot. I would love it. It'd be awesome. Number one, we so rarely see enemy antagonist mobile suits in the Kotoki line, in the Verka line. So, the Shinanju would be kind of the one example. And we talked about this last time, actually. There was a few that I had forgotten, aside from the Shinanju. There's also the Sazabi, the Saiko Zaku. So, there's a couple, but generally speaking, they're usually like the Gundam designs, not the non-Gundam antagonist suits that we see as Verkas. It is possible, but I do think that the Rose and Zulu definitely at some point should get some kind of 1/100 scale suit. I think I love the suit, but I would be perfectly happy if it was not a master grade at all, but if it was just an RE100 kit. I know people have mixed thoughts on RE100, not everybody's a fan. But, I thought that was another number mark there. I was just about to sand it off, but it's not. It's an actual detail. Okay. No, I think the Rose and Zulu would be a really good choice for an RE100 kit, just because it's kind of somewhat related to the Hama Hama. And the Hama Hama was an RE100 release. You know, not only is it like canonically related, but it's also just, you know, similar size kind of mobile suit. I feel like, you know, it's a mobile suit that wasn't like one of the main characters in a story, but was a pretty like sizable enough side character. I actually think the Rosen Zulu probably played more of a part in the Unicorn series than the Hama Hama did in Double Zeta. But anyway, yeah, I would love a 100 scale Rosen Zulu. Fingers crossed on that. Don't think it'll be Verka though. Yeah, the Rosen Zulu is sick. Yes, indeed. I mean, they made 2 different versions of the HG. Well, I mean, at the time, Bandai was kind of really cashing in on the popularity of Unicorn by making a lot of the different mobile suits featured in the OVA into actual HG model kits. Mostly HG. I mean, as far as master grades go, obviously all we really got was the Shinanju and the Unicorn and its various versions of the Unicorn. I guess we got like the Delta Plus, the Rizal, a few other different ones, but mostly HGUC kits. Okay. So with this, we can glue this part onto here. I do need to make sure, even though I'm kind of trying to talk to you guys at the same time, I should make sure I don't miss anything, because sometimes in these builds there'll be little sections where you're supposed to cut out a little bit or kind of drill a little something or something like that. I feel like more so in the suits than in the ships, but still I need to be careful I don't miss anything. I do need to pay a little bit of attention to what I'm doing here. That goes like that. And these parts fit into here. Okay. Like that. Interesting. Okay. I always kind of like have to just check to make sure where the piece is supposed to go, make sure I have a good sense of where it's supposed to go, make sure it fits right, and then go ahead and glue it. A little bit of glue on the actual peg connection. And, oops, get that. Make sure that's in there properly. And a little bit of glue on the connection around the side of that as well. And then opposite side here. A little glue there. A little glue there. Set that into place. Oh, see, this is why you test it, because it's not fitting in there firmly. And that means that there's something in the way. See, I should have checked beforehand, because now I've got some sticky glue there that I had to fight with to get this to fit in there. So just little bits of flash and stuff. This is why it should test fit, and why I test fitted the first one. I should have known better to just test fit this one as well before I went ahead and put it on. But any little bit of flash, or maybe like you cut off a nub and there's just like a little bit of something in the way, you just kind of have to look out for. So that's better. In this case, it was a little bit of flash there on that part that was in the way. Go ahead and get some more glue on these. Just make sure everything's all in there nice and secure. Make sure we've got plenty of glue fumes to breathe here. And this part then fits inside of here like this. Like that. I think I guess so. I'm gonna say okay. Looks right. I guess so. Just according to the manual. Looking at the manual, that's how it's supposed to look, I guess. So fair enough. If it ends up not being correct, we'll just have to rip it out and try again later. But I think it's right. Let me just adjust this a little bit here for you guys. Maybe a little bit better image quality. Let's see. Right after they changed their distribution, so no one oversees Skin 30s. Okay, what's going on? You guys are talking about something with the DOM. I just recently got a new job, so I'm looking forward to buying more kits. They've been so expensive the past couple of years. I'm sure Bandai is going to be like, see, the DOM 1.5 was doing rookie numbers. No one wants mono MGs. No, I think the DOM 1.5, I'm sure, is selling exactly how Bandai would expect it to sell. Anybody who's like in the industry, I think probably, like being, I mean, obviously it's an industry kind of that I've been, tertially, is that the correct word, involved with for a number of years, but now like actually working here at the USA Gundam Store facility and like being in close contact with Adam and talking to Adam about all sorts of different stuff, just about like kind of the business side of things. I've just kind of learned even more kind of about how stuff works. And I'm sure like anybody in this position, like in this industry, could have told you that the DOM and Rick DOM 1.5 weren't going to be like the top selling MGs ever by any means, because they're, essentially just like they're not even full 2.0s. If they had been full on 2.0s, they would have sold even better. But just the fact that it's a 1.5, not a complete 2.0, already, I mean, like anybody who already has a DOM is going to not be too incentivized to buy another one unless they really like it. Whereas if it's a 2.0, then even the people who already have the 1.0 will be more interested to want to check out, hey, all right, well, what's this 2.0 got to offer now? What's different from the original kit? So yeah, that's not too surprising. So I don't know what the exact numbers look like compared to other releases, but I'm sure the sales of the DOM and Rick DOM, are low as far as MGs go, but I'm sure Bandai expected that. I think it was a kit that they could produce pretty easily. And, they didn't, I don't think they put out a ton of that kit, whereas like a normal, like completely brand new MG, they would produce 100,000, for example. Maybe with that kit, they maybe produced 40,000, something along those lines. Again, that's not don't quote any of those numbers because it's not anything that I know with any amount of certainty. I'm just saying, for example. Let's go ahead and put these parts here on the bottom next. Our little helmet pieces here, which I'm sure were originally ping pong balls on the original kit by Koyokama-san. So we talked earlier about how like the body is made up of airplane fuselages here. These parts were, I'm sure, just originally ping pong ball parts or ping pong balls that were used for making the model kit. Even now, still, now that it's an actual model kit, they still just look like ping pong balls. The parts do. And just the size and shape of it, I mean, it's fairly obvious. I love the Rigazi custom and am forever happy it got an MG for everything else. Yeah, that was a pretty out of nowhere announcement, but it made for a cool kit. Yeah, I know a lot of people really enjoyed that one. I gotta say that's probably been one of the more popular MGP Bandai designs, I would say, especially one that's like based off of an older kit. That basically is similar to the regular Rigazi. Now, to this point, they haven't come out with like a sort of 1.5 version of the regular Regacy, right? As like a P Bandai kit. I feel like that maybe does already exist, and I just kind of am forgetting about it. But it's similar to the Dom, right? The only reason we got the 1.5 Dom is because they made the Dwaj, and they made new parts of the frame essentially to make the Dwaj and Dwaj Kai into a nicer kit. And seeing as how that's what they did with the Regacy, they could then just make the 1.5 version of the Regacy based off of the new and improved parts they made for the P Bandai variations. Notice no regular 1.5 Regacy so far. Yeah, just I don't even necessarily mean like regular as in like standard release regular. I just mean like just like the same design as what already existed with the original Regacy, and then just a 1.5 version of that, like with the Dom. But looks like you guys are saying that no, it's just the unicorn version. Yeah, there was that unicorn version with like the backpack was different, right? I know I built and reviewed that kit. I should know, but the Regacy is not a design that I know that well, and especially like among its different variants and everything else. It's just not a design that I'm that familiar with its variants and things like that to be able to remember something like that, even if it's a kit that I built and reviewed. I just liked the kit. Yeah, so both the custom and the other one were both pretty cool. Milky Shame said, "Hey, I have a question." We have a question. Bandai has been weird about reusing molds recently. Some kits get a lot of uses, like the Zaku Warrior, and others, like the Jagan, get forgotten. Yeah. I don't know what your question is in there, but if you're just kind of bringing up the topic for me to discuss, yes, that's true. And I don't know the reasoning behind that either. I couldn't tell you. It is strange. I agree. I don't quite understand it. The Jagan, I expected we'd see lots of variants of that, because with the HG, we have lots of variants of the HG. So it is a bit weird that with the MG, so far, not too much. We got a couple of variations of the MG, and they're like very slight variations. I would love if we would get like an Awak Jagan, probably be my #1 pick. But there's a number of really cool Jagan variants that I would love to see. So fingers crossed, we will get some more. I think we will get some more eventually. I would imagine that probably what's going on is just that Bandai's production capacity is still just kind of not up to maybe what it once was, like pre-COVID, or they're just kind of like still dealing with that. I mean, just to give you a sense of how Japan is still dealing with COVID, I mean, like there's still to this point, this hasn't opened back up like fully for tourism even yet. I think I heard something recently that like starting from next month is when they're finally gonna open up again, like for some degree of tourism for foreigners to come in. But I don't know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't know, I've seen like pictures of people going to Japan recently, so I don't know what's the deal with that. PewDiePie is in Japan recently too, isn't he? Did he move there or something? I've not kept up with PewDiePie on YouTube at all, but I follow him on Instagram, so like I see his Instagram posts sometimes, and I've seen he's been in Japan recently, or is currently there or something, and it almost looks like he moved there. Maybe one of you guys know better about what's going on with him. Did he move there, or is just visiting there? But I thought Japan was not open for tourism yet still, or what's the deal with that? I heard you need a visa to go and can only do scheduled tours. Well, that's what I thought was the deal for like what's coming up in next month, was that you can only go on like tours. But yeah, I think even now, and like for the past few months or so, you were able to go if you had a visa. But like for American citizens, I know you just get the visa when you arrive there. You don't have to like do any sort of special application or anything like that. You just land in the country and they just stamp your passport with your 90-day visa. So I don't know if you have to, maybe they changed it to that you have to have a particular type of visa, not just like the standard one. I don't know, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's not fully banned, just restricted. Still crazy. This long on, yeah, definitely. He was definitely trying since 2020, so maybe he finally got in. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'll have to check out his YouTube channel to see what the deal is with that. If he actually, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he just moved there, because I'm sure it's something he wouldn't mind doing if possible. And you know, if he's just making YouTube videos as he does, that's the kind of thing you really can just live. He could just live there. It's not like he needs to live in any particular country, like for work or something. But I don't know how that works with Japan and Sweden. It might be, you know, different countries. I know, like with the U.S., I don't think that would be possible to do that as just a U.S. citizen, to move there. Just being like a YouTuber, I think you would have to like go over as a teacher or something, and then become a YouTuber, and then apply to stay. Basically, like you'd have to prove that the money you're making independently is enough to support you to be a job in the eyes of the Japanese government, so that you don't need your typical work visa that you would otherwise need if you were working in just a teaching job or whatever. Japan wouldn't let me pass the transit zone anyways if I landed over there to do legit stuff in the country. What? Why is that mercenary? Is it because of the mercenary name? No, but what do you mean? I don't know. E, runner E. There we go. All right, we need E 9, 10, 22, and 21. They're still just kind of structural kind of type pieces at this point. Some of these are anyway. I don't want to get these confused because these parts look similar and it's kind of hard to tell them apart in the manual. So I'm going to do one at a time here. This is number 10, goes along with number 22 here. I just hope we don't get another unicorn. Yeah, I don't think it'll be, if you guys are talking about like the new MG Verka kit, I definitely don't think it'll be another unicorn kit. So I think you can rest assured on that. I think it is very possible. And as I mentioned on like the post I made a few days ago when that was first announced, or when it was kind of first leaked, or I guess it was announced from Bandai, right? I mentioned that I hope it's like a 2.0 Verka RX-78-2. And I think that's definitely possible, considering it's the 20th anniversary. I think that does kind of make sense and could very likely happen. But like another version of the unicorn, no, I don't expect that that's going to happen, just because of the fact that the MGEX just came out fairly recently. And I mean, just a couple of years ago. And that's supposed to be like the definitive Verka unicorn kit. So I don't think they would make another one unless they came out with one that was like a non-LED version of that. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I know a lot of people had been hoping that they would come out with a version of the MGX unicorn that doesn't come with the LED gimmick, just because that would make it a lot cheaper. But I just don't think that that's going to happen. just because the lighting feature is like that's the main draw of that kit. So it'd be kind of counterproductive for them to just release a version of that kit without that feature. What's the point of that, right? Now this part, I don't quite understand where this is supposed to fit in here. So let's see. Okay, I think I got it. It's kind of a strange way that fits in. All right, I got it. There we go. Something like that. Let's go ahead and get some glue on this little guy here. Interesting. It's a snug fit too. Yeah, what these pieces are that I'm putting on at the moment are basically kind of, yeah, just like internal structural kind of pieces here. Basically, so like this piece here, go ahead and put that cap on that glue before we knock that over. This piece here, if you notice, like out the back, we have like these kind of vents right here, exhaust kind of, it looks like. And gluing this part on the inside basically makes it so that it's not just a hollow gap, but there's actually something inside there. It doesn't necessarily add any detail at all, unfortunately. It would have been nice if it was actually adding something in there. But yeah, like it's just inside here. Now what you could do pretty easily is just to like add some detail into this part here before you glue it in, and that would be probably the smart thing to do if you really wanted to detail it. But I think, you know, like when it's all said and done and everything's all painted, this is going to be just a dark inside detail that's barely going to be visible at all anyway. So probably not too big of a deal to just leave it as it is. Adding this in will make it look better than having nothing there at all. But adding detail into there is, I mean, like, it's kind of like adding detail onto the underside of front skirts of a Gundam model kit. It looks cool when you see it by itself, but when you look at the finished product, it's completely invisible anyway. So it's kind of like, what's the point? But I mean, it's kind of thing that you're definitely more of a Chad if you do it, but ultimately doesn't have too much effect on anything really. All right, so I think ultimately today, I think this is going to be our goal. I want to get to the point over here, where we're putting the top and bottom half together so that we get at least the main body done for today. I think that'll be a good point to get to. So planning on streaming for about another 40 minutes. And I think that should be enough time to get us there. Let's see. I feel like the Phantom could fit in MGEX, maybe even the Turnex. The Phantom? That's an interesting idea. For like the extreme point of that to be like all the effect parts, kind of makes sense. But at the same time, I feel like, well, I don't know. I feel like they would just use the frame of the already existing Master Grade Crossbone Gundam, which they could do, but the problem with that is that I feel like with the MGEX line, they're trying to not come out with just variants of kits, but have completely new kits. So like they're completely new from the ground up. And so that would mean that they couldn't really use a frame that's already existing. They would want to make a new one. And if they're going to make a new frame, then they wouldn't necessarily need to release the Phantom Gundam as an MGEX. It could just be just a regular MG, and at that, probably even a P Bandai MG. All right. So definitely feeling it now, Mr. Krabs, with those glue fumes. But we have one more piece here for the bottom half. And we have a couple of pieces to add on to our engine, and then we can work a little bit on the top half as well. Just not RX-78 or Unicorn, please. Yeah, Patrick, I don't know. I'm telling you, I think an RX-78-2 could be very possible. And I don't know. I think I completely understand why some people wouldn't be too happy about that, just because, you know, the whole thing about getting so many versions of the RX-78-2. But you got to remember, RX-72 is the Gundam. So we're always going to get more versions of the RX-72. There's never going to come a time when Bandai is going to stop making versions of that. All right. So this piece fits on the bottom here. So we'll dribble a little bit of glue on there, and we can call that done. And the bottom half, at least for now, is all done. So basically I had to just put this couple ping pong balls on there, this little ring part there at the bottom, and a few other pieces on the inside, and kind of this front bit there. And that's about it for the time being. Easy enough. Still plenty of work to do once we actually pop the two pieces together, but for now, let's go ahead and clean up the nubs a little bit here on the top half, and we'll get to work on this. Oh, I said there was something on the engine, but the glue is still drying on that, so let me show you guys something here. Just a second. A little tip for you guys from a very amateur machining Krieger enthusiast. Here is something that I started doing with my kits, and a highlighter would be better. I don't have a highlighter on hand, but when you come to a point on the build like this here, let me move this a little bit so I can zoom in a little bit like that. We can focus on this part here. There we go. Okay, so yes. Okay, here's the tip for you guys. For a part like this, which is our engine piece here, we put these two halves together, and then there's a number of other parts that fit around that, but I'm not ready at the moment to put those parts on because I'm still waiting for the glue to dry. So we need to sand this seam line some more before we can add these parts in there. These little ones I could probably do right now, but yeah, the way they fit on there, it looks like they're probably going to be in the way. So I want to skip these parts for now and just kind of move on to another section. But here's what I do when I skip, especially little parts, is I'll normally use a highlighter, but this is it's like a highlighting crayon. It's kind of a weird thing. I've never seen these in America, but they use them in Korea. It's from Korea. I will highlight the parts that I'm temporarily skipping so that I'll remember to come back to them later in the manual. So I mean, like this, like nose cone, or it's like nose cone. It's like actually like the engine. I don't know what you call it, just the end of the engine part. Obviously, probably not going to forget that. But these are like, especially little bits, and especially like on some of the other kits where you have like just these tiny little parts you're adding onto there. If I'm going through the manual and I'm not ready to put the part on right at that exact time because I'm waiting for the glue to dry on the part or something like that, then I'll just highlight it in the manual so that I don't forget to come back to it later. So just a little helpful tip for you guys. Hopefully it's something that I do whilst working on these. And so at this particular moment, yeah, not ready to work on that part of the engine. That means actually we might not be able to put our whole chassis together at this stage yet, but we'll see. Anyway, let's see. If I had to bet, I would say it is in fact going to be some variation of the RX-72. Unfortunately, yeah, especially considering they're making a big deal about it being the 20th anniversary. if they would just said like just an upcoming Verka kit, and there was no mention of it being the anniversary, whether it is or isn't. If they didn't mention it, then I would assume, it's probably just going to be, whatever the next Verka kit might be. But considering that they made mention of it being specifically 20th anniversary, I feel like it's got to be something like especially commemorative. And the original ARC-72 Verka kit has been, 20 years. It's been out. It's been out for a long time. And yeah, technology has come a long way since then. So I feel like Bandai and Kotoki both probably would like the opportunity to go back to a very beloved design and, give it some proper justice. Not that there's anything, not like the old kit is an injustice, but, they have the technology to make it even better. And like I said, it's a design that a lot of people like quite a bit, the Kotoki version of the ARC-782. It's a kit that, even for as old as that kit is, I'm sure that Master Grade kit, whenever Bandai reproduces it, it sells pretty well. I mean, there's been times, even while I was living in Asia, living in Korea, and even in Japan, like, it's not always an easy kit to come by, unless it's just recently been reprinted. So, I mean, it's still a popular kit, despite its age. So I think it makes sense that Bandai might take the opportunity to make a completely new version of it, which, I mean, whether you want or don't want any more versions of the ARC-782, I think the one thing that is guaranteed, if it is another version of the ARC-782, is that it's going to be a really great kit, period. So, like, objectively, you may not be, looking forward to the design, but I think it's fair to say that it's going to be a very nice kit. So, I mean, look at the past two versions of the ARC-782 that we've got in the Master Grade line, the Origins version and the 3.0, both of which are two of the best Master Grade kits, period. So it'll be a good one. It just may not be what you want. All right, now this section here is it's kind of messy if you're trying to take it all in at once. Zoom in a bit here for you guys. Move this stuff off to the side there. So it's like a mess of lines. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 separate parts that all just go shoop onto the main part. You kind of have to take it one part at a time, I feel like. So rewrapping our focus there a little bit for you guys. Gold jointed ARC-782 Verka? No, I don't think that'll be the case. I still think the 20th anniversary of Verka kits should be a Kotoki original design. Yeah, I think, Jazz, that's also a good point. I think you're right on that. That also makes as much sense. Like, look, I'm not saying that it's guaranteed to be a 2.0 version of the ARC-782. I'm just saying that that's one option that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right that another option that does make a lot of sense would be a Kotoki original design. Now, let's see. D26, I feel like, yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe not. Okay, if you notice in the manual, some sections are grayed and others are not. I feel like the sections that are grayed are areas of the kit that are not going to show later. But actually, now that I'm looking at it again, I think that the reason that certain areas are gray is that these are parts of the kit that will show on the finished kit. If you have the cockpit open, potentially this inner area of here is an area that should be painted because it will show. So it's basically telling you, okay, like throw at least like some dark gray paint or something in this area, just because it's something that even though it's on the inside, it will show on the finished model if you have the hatch open. Then you have like little bits in here. It's going to be hard for you guys to see, but like inside this like front vent there, it's showing that gray, I think, just because, again, like we talked about with the back vent, it's going to be barely visible, but it is going to be visible. Yeah. Like the affronted there saying, if it's gray, I think it means you need to paint. Yeah. So it's a part that's on the interior of the model, but they're just letting you know, like, hey, even though this is on the inside of the model, it is a part that is going to need to be painted. So it's kind of interesting. It's like these parts here around the back. This is going to be like where the engine's going to go, but the engine's not going to cover this entire section. So it's just telling you that this is going to be a part that's going to be partially visible. So you need to paint it. So interesting. That's pretty cool. It's not really going to make too much of a difference, at least, I don't know, for the way that I'm going to go about painting it. I guess like if you were wanting to airbrush the kit, then it might be good to maybe like, obviously like airbrush the inside of this before you close up the main body. But at least for our purposes, since we're just going to be, number one, we're not going to have the hatch open. And number two, I'm just going to be hand painting it. And even like the inside of certain places you can reach with a brush. It's not really that big of a deal. Either that or it's going to be so barely visible. If you can't reach it with a brush, then you probably can't even see it unless you're really trying hard to see it. So anyway, where were we? Yes, the 26 and 27. Let's see. Right. Yes, here's 27. Where's 26? 26. Oh, it's right next to there. It just looks completely different. I was expecting it to like look the same, but just opposite. But no, it looks very different. That's why I couldn't see it. All right. Anything else from the D runner while we're here? Yes, number 6 and 7 right here. Okay. Those two pieces are going to need to be glued together first before they go inside of there. Fair enough. And that's all from the D runner. Everything else is from the E runner. So right here, first of all, E11 and 12. These are also like inside event pieces. E19 and 20. Same deal for those. And then E5. This little guy here. And I think that should be everything for this section. Yep. Okay. How often do machining Krieger kits get reprinted? Your videos and Lincolns have made me curious, but the SAFS are pretty much out of stock everywhere. Yeah, they don't really get reprinted as much as they get sort of like a reissue. Like it'll come out. It'll seem like the kit's coming out again for the first time. I don't know how to really describe it. It's basically a reissue, but like it'll be with a new box. But I don't know. They do get reprinted sometimes. Anyway, the point is not very often. Basically, when the kits come out, you want to get it when it comes out and not wait for a reprint, because you might be waiting either a long time or indefinitely. But they have been like going through and reprinting a lot of them more recently, or coming out with like more variations. So like, for example, they're coming out with the new version of the Altair, basically. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's like the Grosserhund, like a space version of the Grosserhund. And I can't even remember. I'd have to look at it to tell you. I think if I remember correctly, it had like the backpack of the Altair and the nose of the Dachshund, basically. So they're just kind of like a variant. That's the best time to grab one if it's like if it's a particular design that you really like, that you've been trying to get your hands on. Yeah, if it's not getting a reprint, they're probably going to be difficult to find. Don't overpay, because they're already kind of expensive. I mean, like compared to like Bandai Gunpla, they're expensive kits. You know, they're still like reasonably priced, I think, fairly priced, but yeah, compared to like a Gundam kit, when you got like an SAFS suit that's, you know, a 120 scale, it's going to be about that big, and like hardly any articulation in it, and like accessories aren't like a thing either. Like, yeah, the value of that where that's going to cost, I don't know, maybe $30, and then you could get like a $15, half the price, HG kit from Bandai that's, you know, has all this articulation and weapons and accessories and everything. Like, it seems like you get so much more with the Bandai kit. So like, it can, in that sense, the Machine Krieger kits can seem expensive, but honestly, I think they're quite fairly priced usually if you get it like when it's new, when they're out, and not have to pay like secondhand scalping prices later on. Anyway, yeah, I would say check out, if you're wanting to get into the kits and you wanted to try out one of the suits, maybe get a pre-order in for the new version of the Altair that's coming out, Altair Dachshund. Again, somebody can help me out with the name of that, but Jazz, yeah, I would get a pre-order in for that kit. Those kits, I've built a couple of them now, and I can tell you they're not like any more complicated than the suits. I mean, they're gonna take, you know, some degree of modeling skills. If it's like your first model ever, you might have a little bit of trouble with it, but basically, like, you will have to do some gluing, definitely, some seam line removal, all this stuff. Like, they're model kits that, you know, take a little bit of work. But yeah, especially those kits. Many variations of the Grosserhund are really cool kits. So I've built a couple of them. I've not painted any of them so far. I think I have 2 that are fully built that are just not painted yet. One that's does have surfacer on it, so it's ready for paint. The other one that doesn't even have surfacer on it yet. But anyway, yeah, I would say, Jazz, to maybe check out one of those if you like the design. I mean, if you just prefer one of the suits, you know, just wait for the next suit to come out, I would say, or, you know, try to see if you can get your hands on one. I would definitely get one of the 120 scale suits for a first Machine Krieger kit to try out. Don't mess with one of the 135th scale kits, because as I was talking about earlier, I don't know if you're here earlier towards the start of the stream, but the 135th scale kits are a lot more work, and which is a lot less fun to work on. They're still cool, but the 120 scale ones are so much nicer to work on. Speedball Haro, out of curiosity, will you do a live stream build of the YOLO Park Optimus Prime kit? I don't even know if I'm going to build that kit in general. I'm a little bit curious just because of like how intense the build looks. You know, so far everybody's been very impressed by how incredible the detail looks on that kit, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not that into Transformers, and I don't know if it's that interesting to me that I even want to spend time building it. It's time that I could spend on, you know, building something that I'm more interested in. But if I'm gonna build one, then maybe live stream build. Yeah. But I can't promise that at the moment, I would say. Robert, what do you think of my loadout file? Robert, I'm not sure what you mean. Did you send me something or something? Should I know what you're talking about? Mike said, does anyone know if there's any flat fillers sold for hard points on kits like frame arms or 300s? I'm talking about just something you plug in that's flush, the hole covered up. Yes, so Mike, yes, Kotobukiya does make some. I don't know offhand. I can't remember if they make any that are just flat. I think they're usually like detailed to look like a screw head or something like that. I think they're usually called like a minus mold, just because looks like a minus symbol. And there's like minus mold and plus mold is what they're called from Kotobukiya. I'm not sure if they have a set that includes just flat pieces, but that's really easy to just make on your own. If you can't find one that you can just buy, Mike, the best way would just be to just use runners, because most, not all the time, but very often, runners are generally around 3 millimeters in diameter, which is the exact same size of what Kotobukiya uses for their hard points on their kits. So you just, sorry, I'm just getting rid of a little bit of flash on the inside of this before I glue this piece in. Yeah, just cut off a piece of runner and stick it in there, and then cut it off at your desired. If you want it to be like, if you want to get rid of the hole entirely, probably what you'll have to do is stick your runner piece in there and with some glue and cut it off. And it depends if there's a detail line around it, then you'll have to use some putty or something to fill that. But if it's just the hole, then just gluing a piece of runner in there, just gluing that and sanding that should be enough to get rid of that. And then you might need to go in just using some super glue or something like that, just to fill in any like little micro imperfections there. But Robert's talking about, from my last live stream, what do I think of my loadout file? I still don't know what you're talking about, Robert. I'm sorry. It's from my last live stream, but that was going back all the way to Friday. It's Monday now, so it's a long time you're asking me to remember. It's kind of funny, just to go off on like a little bit of a tangent here, but since I brought it up, when I come to work on Monday, I always feel like I haven't been here for a lot longer than 2 days. As in, like, my weekends feel very long, I guess. So, like, even though I've only been gone since Friday, I feel like I've been gone like 3 or 4 days, like that. It's kind of weird. But let's see. Have you tried that wave punch thing? It punches out heat sink pattern for custom vents. Looks pretty sick. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Patrick. I think I know what you're talking about. It's like you're talking about a rivet punch. I do have that, and I have tried that on a build that I am actually currently working on, and actually you guys will see that in the video that I'm currently working on for that build, where I use a rivet punch tool from Wave, if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm just getting some glue on this guy here. Man, I would love for my weekends to feel longer. Chris Jones said, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't explain it. Weekends haven't peaked since 2009 lately. I don't know. It's not necessarily like in a good way. It's just in a weird way. It's not like I had such an amazing weekend. I like really enjoyed it to the max, and like not necessarily like that. I mean, like I usually have a pretty good weekend, but it's not like I was just like going everywhere and doing everything and so busy and like having a jam-packed weekend that just kind of feels like I've been gone for ages. It's not like that. It's just I don't know. Interesting. Hasegawa actually referenced and credits Fuch Factor for his resin Falke from 2006. What's going on, Steergetty? What are you talking about? Is that a reference to a previous comment? Or during the working year, I sneeze and my weekend is over. Yeah. Your Gunpla critique episode 2. Okay, sorry. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about my yes, the critique live stream. Not okay. No, I know what video we're talking about. Sorry, let me go back. Okay. Last week's. Oh, what did you think of my loadout file? Robert, hang on. I'm sorry. I'm just still lost. You're talking about your build that you submitted for the critique? I'm sorry. My memory is terrible. Really terrible. And now I see your previous comment here, Sturgetty. Sorry, I lost it there in the chat. It said Hasegawa. Oh, okay, wait. There was another one before that. I think the Hasegawa Falke released in 2008. Yes. Let's see. I'm just kind of getting lost. Someone asked when the Falke first released. Okay, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I have. I mentioned earlier that I posted that loadout in there. I'd have to go back and look at the photos. I'm sorry, Robert. I'd have to kind of jog my memory. It's just, it's really difficult for me to recall things like while I'm in the middle of doing this. So send me a message or something like that would be a better way. Just like a private message that I can check later on. But as to, do you think time goes faster or slower when doing Gunpla? Kind of depends. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it feels like it goes much faster and sometimes not. Like sometimes I'll be like, if I'm like really in the zone and knocking out a build, like I'll finish what I'm doing and look at the time and like I expected it to be like 2 hours later and it's 1 hour later. So time didn't go very, very fast at all. But then other times I'll look at the clock and be like, oh my God, it's super late. So it just kind of depends. But anyway, no, I was just gonna make a point as to other versions of the Falke that I have in the stash at home. And I think I do have the original one and the re-release from like just 1 or 2 years ago, fairly recently re-released version that, well, no, it's a version of the Griffin that I have that came with the patch, I believe. Is that right? The Bomber, is that right? The Bomber Cat version? I think I have 2 other versions of the Falke. This is the 3rd one that I own, I believe. How does this part fit into here? Apparently something like this. No, here. Okay. Yes. It's always kind of looking at the manual. I'm like looking at it because there's so many different arrows going every which way. But now I kind of finally figured it out. Yes, it fits right here. Okay. Bomber Cat had the patch, right? But I want to say that there's maybe one. I know there is more versions than that. I think there's the original Falke, original Griffin, and then is the Bomber Cat the only other one other than that before this? All right. Or is there something else in there in between? I think that might be it. So this is essentially kind of like the 4th version of this kit. Trying to hold this piece in place. It's not cooperating at all. I'm trying to hold it in place somewhat while I can just get some glue in there. All right. Okay. Yeah, I love the shirt, and I still wear those shoes. Yeah, I did until recently. I was still, I at least maybe not wore them every day, but I still owned a pair of Americas that I would at least like switch between for a long time until just recently. I haven't had a pair for a while, but I just haven't bought shoes like in general for a couple of years, I guess. I actually do need some new shoes probably pretty soon, so the last pair that I had that I really loved was the Sue 2s. It's the Jerry Sue, like a custom shoe. Those were nice because they were like a kind of mid top, super comfortable, and lasted quite a while too. So they were really good. I never see my feet on camera. Oh, can do like the whole PewDiePie thing of questioning if I actually have legs or not. Here's the instrument panel, which has a ton of detail on it, but unfortunately, I'm not going to zoom out a little bit. Focus, please. Come on. I'll get it. Bear with me. Probably should have just done this. Stay zoomed out and try to focus it here. There we go. Right. Lots of detail there. But it's going to be stuck on the inside. Bummer. I missed the beginning of the stream, but did you mention what your plan is for the color scheme? No, the affronted, no. I didn't mention that because I don't know yet. I have no idea. I have an idea of something that I've wanted to do with a Falke kit for a long time. But just not with this version. I think this goes on here, right? Instrument panel. Again, I probably could just not worry about putting the instrument panel in there because it's not going to be visible at all, but it's here, so let's go ahead and put it in there. No, I have an idea that I've had for a long time for a Falke build, but with this one being like the 40th anniversary version, I wanted to kind of do something fairly traditional with it. Whereas the other idea that I had is like non-traditional, where it involves like a kit bashing with some like a Gundam type parts on it. So that probably sounds kind of dumb and weird in question, but just to kind of summarize it without like giving away too much of the idea, just to kind of give you guys in a somewhat of an idea of what I have in my head for that, for another different version of the Falke later on, is that I wanted to kit bash it with some parts from the XS. Basically, and I don't know which exact parts even at this point, but like maybe like replacing the gun. This one has the Gatling gun. I think it's the Griffin that has the laser gun, right? replacing the gun with like maybe not all, but like part of like the beam smart gun. And then so like it's not really that much of a kit bash, really. It's basically just like replacing some parts of the Falke with that of like the excess. So like the beam smart gun here for the gun, and then these like the wing fins out the side, replacing those with like the wings parts that are like on the top of the shoulders of the excess Gundam, you know, those kind of weird wings that are just on the top of its shoulders for some reason. So it's kind of struck me as a weird aspect of the design, but those parts here on the side here. So just like kind of replacing some of the aspects of this design with some parts of the excess, and then giving it like a color scheme sort of based off that. But I don't think it would, I think it would be very difficult to paint this kit in like a traditional Gundam tricolor scheme, which is basically what the excess is, where it's like mostly white and then it has the regular tricolor red, yellow, blue on it. I don't think that it would exactly fit onto here, but maybe doing it in some sort of like scheme where it's maybe like white on the bottom, and then you have like a soft transition on the sides to where like the top part is like the blue or orange. That could work. Or blue, like large splinter camo, like what's on the excess, depending on like which artwork you're looking at of the excess, but of like the excess Gundam, how, or like the Hummingbird, how they have like that large splinter camo design on them. Doing something like that, like on the top of the Falcon, and then like having the bottom just be white or something like that, I think could look pretty cool. So anyway, that's an idea for another version later on. This one just being the 40th anniversary. I want to do it, yeah, kind of traditional. All right, we got a few more bits on this guy here before we can get to a good stopping point here for today. Let's go ahead and continue on here. Let's see. There's the Otsu, which has the laser gun the Griffin has. Right. Yeah, I think I was confusing the Otsu version and the Bomber Cat version. Yeah, I was thinking there was something else in between, but right. Thank you. Anyway, the Zeta C1 colors might look nice. Yes, that would be, the C1 is the gray version, right? The A1 is the like the red and kind of off-white cream, the Amuro version. The C1 is just like the gray Sentinel version of the Zeta Plus, right? Yeah, that could work. I mean, because it's just basically gray. I think that would work pretty fine for this kit's design, yeah. All right. Oh, this part is also just kind of like a interior instrument panel kind of section here too, isn't it? So also inconsequential part that we're not really going to need, but again, since it's here, we'll go ahead and put it on. I don't know. Maybe I should not be so quick to rule out the possibility of having the hatch open. Maybe I will want to have the hatch open. We'll see. Let's at least put the, put the parts in here, so that way they're there. If I do decide maybe I want to keep the hatch open on it. That means I do have to decide if I want to have the pilot in there, because I don't think we'll be able to fit the pilot in. Maybe one of you guys know. One of you guys, can you tell me if I seal up the kit without the pilot figure inside, will I be able to get the pilot figure in through the hatch? Because I have a feeling the hatch hole will be too small to be able to fit that in there. But maybe one of you guys can let me know for sure on that. And I also feel like I was not supposed to glue this part, which I just glued. I wasn't supposed to glue this part. Okay, luckily the glue is not set yet, so I can just kind of, as long as I move that around a little bit, the glue won't set. This is for the hatch, if I want to have the hatch open. So You won't be able to get the pilot in. I'm nearly positive. Been like 5 years since the moment. Okay. Yeah, I'm assuming it's probably going to be very difficult because just like I said, I'm working on the Lunadiver Stingray at home. And what I have planned for that kit is to have the pilot figure like half in the cockpit, so that he's like standing on the seat when like and like reaching out of the cockpit, standing on the outside of it, sort of. So with that kit, I know just from what I've been working on with it so far that I can tell you, if I wanted to, now that like the whole kit's all sealed up, if I wanted to actually get the pilot figure completely inside, wouldn't be possible. But for my plans for it to only have his legs inside, it'll be fine. So I have not put the pilot figure inside the actual cockpit yet. All right, but that's neither here nor there. That's on a different kit that you guys will see in a different work in progress video soon enough, probably. Just as soon as I can finish work, finish a little bit of seam work and all that. Actually, on that note, probably should take some putty home because it needs some putty in a few parts, and I don't have any putty at home. I have some putty here I should take home. So that I think wraps up everything. Okay, well, we got a couple pieces here that are going to go on the side. Let's go ahead and get these ready here first. And then with that, that's everything that we need. Let's see, right side would be C6. And left side is C5. So here I want to keep them separate so I don't get them confused here. D8, which is this one. D8 and D9. Okay. I've made worse mistakes. Cut off a weapon slot for one of the Strike Freedom's beam rifles. Oh yeah, I mean that kind of thing happens too. Is this considered Gunpla or is it Kriegpla? I think it would just be Pramo, probably. Just regular Plamodel, plastic model. About, well, I don't know necessarily, but I was gonna say about as close to like a just military model kit. It's like a real world model kit. About as close to one of those as you can get without with it still being fictional. Speaking of open hatches and whether I want to have the hatch open or not, I know that this front panel here is one area that people sometimes open up. And that could be a cool idea. But then, as you can see, well, okay. So what I mean is, if you guys are unfamiliar, there's this where it looks like a missing panel here. That's because there is a missing panel. There's a separate panel piece that goes over the top of that. And so what some people will do is just cut this section out, and then instead of fixing the armor panel onto their flushly as it's supposed to be, they'll create a little like hatch part, latch or a hinge part, so that it's actually the panel's actually opened up, and then but obviously there's nothing on the inside as it is, so you have to scratch build something to put on the inside of there, which could be cool. Don't know if I want to do that, but that's the kind of thing you kind of feel like I would have to decide that before closing the model up, because that's the kind of thing that would be very difficult to add in later. It's kind of thing you have to, I think, probably build into the kit now at this point before, you know, adding everything else. So I'll have to think about that. Seeing as how I'm thinking about what I want to do with the pilot as well, I may not glue the top and bottom half together today. I may sleep on it, think about what I want to do with the kit ultimately, and I don't know. Then decide whether I want to have any, want to try to add some internal detail in there or something. Haro's invaded the chat. I usually call non-gunpla non-pla. That's, I guess, I mean, yeah, so what would you call like frame arms? Would just be mechapla? I don't know. Oh yeah, it's so we won't get to gluing the two halves together today, just because I noticed we're also over on time. I need to wrap up the stream here, so I'm just going to glue this last little bit here, and I'm going to wrap up the stream for today. And I feel pretty good that we got kind of the main top and bottom half done. There's still a lot of parts here, which is all just kind of parts that just go around on the outside. Got kind of basically, yeah, it's kind of all the main section of it done. So as far as any seam lines so far, I wish I would have done is glued together the other parts that have seams. But there's a seam on the engine. That glue is probably pretty well dry now. I could go ahead and glue that, sand that, but I'm just going to leave that until tomorrow or the next day whenever I come back to work on this some more. And yeah, I don't think that there'll probably will be no live stream tomorrow, but maybe Wednesday we'll continue on with this, just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up as far as that goes. But yeah, I think next time when we continue, I'll have an idea of what I want to do as far as whether I want to have the pilot in there or not, to have the hatch open or not, and then if I want to try to add in some detail inside of there, if I want to have this panel open or not. I think probably not on this side panel. Probably will leave that closed. But whether we want to have the hatch open or not, we'll see. So I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Right now, that's what we got. We've got our two halves that are, for the most part, ready to go together. These panels, which kind of go on the inside of here, in here, like this, up kind of the inside, sort of the armpit, as it were, of the kit, the inside of the arms there. That's where these little panels go. And then the engine, which is basically just kind of sandwiched in here between these parts, something like something like that. Anyway, there we go. Like that, inside there, in the back of there, and there's another little part there at the end, but with the old Yakult bottle. So anyway, and of course the cockpit on the inside. So we glued the instrument panels, and some of the details of the cockpit are like glued up on the inside of the top half, whereas the rest of the cockpit is all just right here. This will just fit up inside of here like this. So that means, yeah, if we want to have the cockpit open, that also means we're going to have to paint it before we seal up the kit. So yeah, it's just all something I'm going to think about. There we go. Like that. So something I'm going to think about. That seems like it's going to be very difficult to try to paint after the fact. Painting it ahead of time, I guess, is probably the way to go if we want to do that. And then you have to just mask it, of course. So we'll see. I'll give it some thought if I want to do that or not. Anyway, Dianjo, thank you for the super chat there. Wow. It's famous Kumpla streamer, Zeku Cornelius. Hello. Yes. All right. So it doesn't look necessarily like we got a whole lot done in today's stream, but we made some good progress. I'm feeling good about that. We got our two halves that we need are meats and cheese, right? To make a good sandwich. thank you guys for hanging out today. Hopefully you found it interesting to build something a little bit different. Like Jazz was asking about before, if you guys have never tried out machine Krieger kits, I would highly recommend it. I really enjoy working on them. It's definitely something different from very different experience from working on just like a regular Gundam kit or whatever. So they're a lot of fun. But yeah, it's certainly not the first time I've ever built one or talked about them. So I'm sure you guys have heard me say that before. Kliber asked, well, there you go. He said, what series does this kit come from? So not everybody here has heard that before, but and then Oscar on Twitch, I'm not sure if he's joking or not, but he said the ship is from Star Wars, right? No, it's in fact not from Star Wars. And Kliber, to answer your question, it comes from the Machine Krieger series, which is not an anime series or manga series or anything like that. It's just it's kind of its own thing. There is like a backstory universe, but it's not like anything that's serialized is the right word, I guess, or not anything that's part of like a. Okay, you said a joke. All right, yeah, it's not from Star Wars, right? But yeah, there's no manga or anime or anything like that, and So anyway, that's gonna be it for today, guys. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you building this some more later on during the week, and yeah, I'll think about the idea for it. So till then, bye-bye. Paint it Covenant colors and bam, Halo. Interesting. Think about that.